What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DevPro Duel video, and this time it's going to be with more of the Blue Eyes deck in action. Specifically a Hieratic hybrid that was kind of based off of builds that were sent in to me through my Facebook fan page. This is no one's specific build, simply because I had like 5 different people that sent me in a Hieratic build of the Blue Eyes deck in its current TCG legal form, with no Felgrand support and no Blue Eyes alternative dragon, literally legal to play today. And everyone was really playing a lot of the same things, so I basically just took everything that I saw that everyone was also playing, put it into a list, and then filled out the last 2 or 3 cards with cards that I personally just wanted to play, because it just seemed like if everyone's playing literally this exact same list of cards, it obviously should be pretty decent, right? But anyway, the entire focus of this deck is literally to use your Hieratics in conjunction with these Blue Eyes cards and make favorable board states for you, and just kind of power through boards. Being able to use Dragon Spirit of White in your graveyard as a normal monster to get back off of Hieratics is actually just really, really cool. It's a lot of favorable interactions that this deck actually does have in it, and like being able to get +1s off of that sort of interaction and stuff like that is all really cool and really key, as well as the fact that you have all these Escher deck options in the form of it's very easy for you to access Ultimaya Zulkin, and then Ultimaya Zulkin itself can be protected by Spirit Dragon into Azure Eyes, if you're able to set up that sort of a board. But then also, you know, Ultimaya Zulkin allowing you to access Beel's Crystal Wing and Stardust Spark, and then you're able to access Moonlight Rose with Zulkin or with Spirit Dragon if that's what you want to do. And then you just have all these really, really good accessible rank 8s that you're able to access because of the Blue Eyes cards, as well as Legendary Maju Garzet. You've got Dark Matter, which is actually really strong in this specific build. And then you have rank 6s that I choose to run in the form of Talmy, till I just start adding back more combo pieces. And then Beatrice, because if you open with just 2 Hieratics and that's your only play, and like Ultimaya Zulkin wouldn't be favorable for you, you can easily just go Hieratic and Labradorite into Beatrice, send Ancient Whitestone to grave, or if you're trying to make a trade-in live, you can send Whitestone and, you know, make a trade-in live that way, or you can just send Ancient Whitestone and the end phase get White Spirit Dragon out of your deck and get your potential combo strings moving. There's a lot of different like niche little interactions that this deck does have. The only thing I really don't like about it is the fact that when you introduce Hieratics into any deck in general, you start increasing its output ceiling, yes, but you start making it very, very combo like thirsty. Like all of the combos in this deck basically require 3 or 4 combo pieces, whereas the strength of the Blue Eyes deck in general, even the pure build now as well as the pure build once we get Alternative Dragon, is very, very good in the fact that like the combo strings that it has are very like lax. It's only like 1 to 2 combo pieces required to make very, you know, meaningful and solid plays, whereas as soon as you put Hieratics into any deck, you do typically start like increasing that to where it takes 3 to 4 combo pieces to make any sort of like solid play string and play moving, like getting any sort of solid play moving. But anyway, that's enough general discussion about this deck and this build, and I'm going to jump straight into the first game. Alright, so first game out of 4. Now, I believe the purpose of this deck playing the Hieratic cards is also just so it can successfully blind second and get the extra card, and thus, you know, use that to fuel its potential combo plays. So, I win rock, paper, scissors, and I choose to go second, blind, and just, you know, see where my opening hand gets me. And my opening hand is actually really good. It's trade-in, you know, Tefnuit, a Convocation to get for a Sue, a Dragon Spirit of White to be traded in, so that automatically means favorable interactions with, like, Hieratics bringing back and popping spells and traps, bringing back the Dragon Spirit of White, and then I've got Dragon Shrine to, like, potentially fuel my hand with whatever else I might need to utilize. But he special Seer out of his hand, normal summons Skarm, makes Dante, detaches Skarm, mills 3, and he mills 2 of the Sticky String Kaiju and 1 Chaos Trap Hole. So at this point I know that he is playing Burning Abyss and he is playing Kaijus in the main, at least a few of them, and probably enough to warrant playing the Interrupted Kaiju Slumber in his deck. So I start my turn with trade-in on the White Spirit Dragon, draw into a Sue and an Ancient Whitestone, so now I have Sue plus Convocation, so I'm able to potentially do quite a few different things that actually like just benefit me in absolutely major ways. So I special Tefnuit, I tribute for Sue, and then I get the Dragon Spirit of White that I traded out of my graveyard, and I banish his back row, which ends up being a Twin Twister. And so now at this point, I can still Convocation and get another Hieratic out of my deck. So I get another copy of Sue, which I tribute over my Sue to special summon itself, and thus allows me to get another vanilla out of the deck. I kind of contemplate my options for a bit, because I'm not overly familiar with the combo strings that this deck can actually pump out, but I'm pretty sure that I actually like just end up with what is one of, if not the most optimal solution. It's definitely an optimal solution, period, but there might be better plays. Who knows? But anyway, so I tribute the Sue for Sue and get Labradorite Dragon out of my deck because now this opens me up to Ultimate Zolkin access. I still have a normal summon left that I haven't used either. I have all these different things that are actually options to me, and I'm trying to figure out what is the best way for me to deal with this Dante. Because I can obviously make Crystal Wing out of Ultimate Zolkin, and then I can also have Blue Eye Spirit Dragon on the board because I literally have access to a level 9 Synchro sitting on my field right now. So I end up making Ultimate Zolkin, sending the Dragon Shrine, getting Crystal Wing out of my deck, or out of my extra deck rather, and summoning it. And I honestly think I might actually want to play double Crystal Wing and cut something like maybe cut the Moonlight Rose or cut the Stardust Spark, potentially, or maybe even just cut the Beals, because I've literally never made Beals in all the games that I've played with this deck so far. And maybe just put in an extra Crystal Wing, because Crystal Wing definitely is a very, very powerful card in its own right. But Crystal Wing attacks over the Dante. He triggers his Dante and his Seer effects. So Dante gets to add a card back, and the Seer will get to special summon something. I just go ahead and negate the last one on the chain link, which ends up being Seer. And unfortunately, my DevPro closed the window there, so you just get a little view of the DevPro chat window. And I had just pulled it up real quick again. But I negated his Seer, so his Dante stayed engraved, but his Dante got to add, I believe he added the Seer back to his hand. The window minimized, and I didn't actually go into the log to check what it could have been. But, so I get to attack him with the Spirit Dragon, which, you know, I used to negate his Seer with to summon Dante back. And then I go ahead and choose to activate my Dragon Shrine and send White Stone of Legend from my deck to grave so that I can add the Blue Eyes from my deck to hand, because I do not want to potentially draw it on my next turn. I want to draw another card that could either be a combo piece in the form of a Hieratic, or like Sage or Maiden, or I want to draw a card that is a settable to use with Ultimate Zolkin. And literally the only card left in my deck that isn't that at the end of the turn is a Blue Eyes, so I just decided to go ahead and get it out of my deck. So he activates Foolish, sending Farfa to his grave. I negate the Farfa activation with Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, and then he reveals a Graph out of his hand, and I'm contemplating whether or not I want to negate it or not, and I'm like, sure, why not? I'm perfectly fine with him not having a Graph in circulation. Like, that's definitely something I'm perfectly fine with. But he special summons Terratop, gets Taketomborg, and then special summons that, and this gives him instant access into whatever rank 3 he chooses. And I know that he has access into, I think the Graph was what he added back off the Dante, actually. That actually makes sense, potentially, or did he already have the Graph? No, he definitely already had the Graph. The only thing he could have added back was Seer. I'm really upset that I didn't check the chat, the like little log, because my window went down and minimized itself because I was too busy like looking at a different tab, and I accidentally tabbed out of the DevPro game itself. But anyway, so I negate his Graph with my Crystal Wing, and it goes up to 4K, so it is huge. And he ends up overlaying for a Dante, milling some cards, and then discarding Seer and ranking up his Dante into Beatrice. And then the Seer triggers, which special summons Dante from his grave. And now at this point, I've already activated Blue Eye Spirit Dragon's effect to go into Azure Eyes. So now literally my Crystal Wing, my Ultimate Zolkin, my Azure Eyes, and my White Spirit Dragon are all protected from destruction from card effects and targeting effects. And so he tries to attack my Dragon Spirit of White with his Beatrice to, you know, attempt to suicide it, potentially, or maybe he's just trying to bait the Blue Eyes out of my hand. I don't potentially know. I think that he might have been willing to just suicide it and get Dante Pilgrim of the Burning Abyss, and then he'd be able to potentially like do nothing else with that. That's the thing. I'm not quite sure why the attack happened. I guess he just knew that the way I would play would force the Blue Eyes out of my hand, since I actually did go out of my way to search it. So there is that potential option. And the Blue Eyes that's on the field is able to be targeted now, so there's that. But anyway, during the standby phase, I activated Azure Eyes' effect to bring back White Spirit Dragon, and he uses Beatrice, sending a Seer from his deck to grave to target his Farfa that's in grave and special summon it. And then the Farfa itself will die, thus trying to banish a card on my field. Now at this point, the Azure Eyes, the Ultimate Zolkin, and the Crystal Wing are still all protected from targeting effects. So there's really nothing that can actually be like used there in forms of, he can only banish either my White Spirit Dragon or my Blue Eyes. So like there's nothing, he can't really banish like one of the problems. That's what I'm trying to say, because literally the problem is untargetable and undestroyable at this current point. So I contemplate if I want to Silver's Cry or if I just want to set and use Ultimate Zolkin's ability. So I end up just setting and getting Moonlight Rose Dragon out of my deck, because that allows me to bounce his Beatrice and thus his Dante gets the trigger that falls off as a material getting Seer back, but that's fine. I'm okay with him getting all of these effects back because he's literally dying this turn. I've got lethal on board, so I attack over his Dante with my Blue Eyes. He gets to activate its effect and use it to shuffle his other Dante back into the deck, simply because he just knows it doesn't matter what he gets at this point. He is looking at over like 7,000 damage. He's looking at 24, 25, and 3k, and he only has 65. So he's definitely taking the hard L at this point in time. So next game, I'm actually like really curious to see how the Hieratic actually like engine just plays out, because this Blue Eyes deck, at least in its pure form, in my opinion, has a very good BA matchup, specifically because you're able to spam Spirit Dragons. And being able to spam Spirit Dragons are actually just really good against the BA deck in general, you know, not factoring in other cards like potential like Kaijus and things like that, because Kaijus obviously don't care about whatever the matchup is. But anyway, I lose RPS. He chooses to make me go first. So my only play that's like really like worth anything is to open with an Ultimaya Zulkin play and set a card and get Crystal Wing out of my deck. So I still have 5 cards, but ultimately it's not nearly as good as it could potentially be, and that's honestly something that I'm really just upset about with the Hieratic deck in general, because the pure build just kind of has these better combo strings that you can utilize with less cards, it seems, because it's just more forceful about its actions. But anyway, my Crystal Wing doesn't stick around for long. It gets tributed for a Kaiju, and that's kind of the problem of the entire like game at this point when you're trying to play this deck, is that any of your big boss monsters that you put out are very, very vulnerable to just being tributed off for a Kaiju. But he specials Terratop, gets Taketomborg, specials that, overlays into Dante, mills 3, and at this point I know that I'm playing against Phantom Knight BA, because he has started doing things with Phantom Knight cards. So he milled quite a few Phantom Knights. He milled gloves and boots. He milled at least gloves, and then he banishes it to send boots, I think. I don't know. I'm losing track. All I know is that a lot of Phantom Knight effects happen, and 2 Dantes hit the board, and he searches for a Fog Blade. So he searches for a Fiendish Chain, and then he gets to use Cloak's ability to add another Silent Boot. So I know he has Fog Blade, and I know he has Cloak. And I know all of these different things are actual potential options that he has. But he reveals a Seer. I think he actually revealed that from his hand, and he summons it. And then he attacks me with his Dante over the Kaiju that he gave me. He attacks the Seer over the Ultimaya Zulkin, which has no protection now. And then he attacks me directly with the Dante. And I'm just looking at the log, trying to confirm what he potentially has. And he has 1 back row. And like at this point, I Twin Twister it. And there's not really much I can do in the face of this. Like, look, I've got a Tefnuit and a Blue Eyes in my hand. There's literally nothing I can do. And I just kind of show him that. And then instead of wasting time allowing him to play out like the turn, because he has a lot of Phantom Knight effects he can resolve, he has a Fog Blade in the grave now that's live that I just gave him. He's got a Seer on his board ready to use his effect, so he has another Burning Abyss. He has all these different options available there as well. So I just decided to surrender, and he like activates a Kaiju Slumber, because so he's got that in grave as well, which I knew was there. And so literally any sort of threat that I could put out in terms of a board on a monster board would have been dealt with just immediately. So, next game, I go second because I win RPS, and he starts his turn off with a Terratop, which is, like, arguably one of the best cards, if not the best card any BA or Phantom Knight variant can start with, because it's just a Dante without having to use your normal summon. It's always been really good. So, Terratop into Taketomborg into a Dante, mills 3, mills a Phantom Knight's Fog Blade, mills a Cloak, and then also mills a Scarm. So, he banishes his Cloak, searches something, normal summons Gloves, special summons Silent Boots, and thus he has access into another Dante if he so wishes to have that be his play line. And if he makes another Dante, he can attach Silent Boots and then search another Fog Blade. So he can easily end his turn with a Fiendish Chain. And that's why the Phantom Knight variant of BA is arguably really strong, is that the fact that you can actually search traps. That's actually just like great. But he mills 3 off Dante, detaching his Silent Boots. I look at his grave. There's another Fog Blade and another Cloak there. So he's milled at least 1 more Fog Blade. And so, at this point, he just sets 2 and passes. So, at this point, I know there's a Fog Blade there, because there's no reason he wouldn't have just searched one with the Silent Boots. So, he just hard drew one of the Fog Blades and then milled the other 2. So, like, kind of sucks to suck. But in the end phase, he uses Scarm, searches a Graph. So, at that point, I know he has some sort of discard outlet. Probably something like Twin Twister, which I'm actually completely fine with, because this deck plays no traps. But I cards of Constance away an Ancient Stone on my turn. My hand is kind of promising, but not really, in the form of Like, if I had drawn any other combo piece that wasn't Labradorite Dragon there, I could have potentially mounted a really, really strong play. But as it stands, I'm literally looking back and forth over my hand trying to figure out what do I do? Because I only have one Hieratic in my hand, and I've got a bunch of vanillas. Literally, Labradorite Dragon, Blue Eyes, and White Spirit Dragon. Those are all vanillas. Those are all terrible. So I ended up Twin Twistering his 2 back row, and it ended up being his own Twin Twister and a Fog Blade, which I had the read on. I had the read on both of those cards. And so at this point, I literally have no other play in the form of I could have special Tefnuit if I wanted to. I could have made Moonlight Rose. But as it stands, I don't think that would have been any sort of beneficial to me because of the fact that, like, I'll be making Moonlight Rose, yes. I'll specially Tefnuit and Normal Summoning Maiden, but honestly, it isn't really that great. It's not good enough. If I had something like Black Rose, then that would have been actually worth it, but Black Rose Moonlight Dragon isn't really that worth because it's only going to bounce one of the Dantes, which you can just make again. It's really nothing worth. So I just, at the end phase, just get my White Spirit Dragon out of the deck, and I'm just prepared to literally just be diddled. So he overlays 2 Phantom Knight dudes into Breaksword, and then he reveals a Graph out of his hand for some reason. I guess he just forgot that he just literally made Breaksword, and that it's not a Burning Abyss name, because he just reveals Graph and then it dies. So, I mean, minor mistakes, they happen. They happen from time to time when you're playtesting with people. I mean, that's all these literal games are playtesting sessions. So, I mean, definitely I've had much worse things happen on my videos. But, so he uses Breaksword, pops my White Spirit Dragon, then he gets his 2 things back as level 4s, turns his Dante to attack mode that he milled with, and then he attacks my Maiden with one of his small dudes that he summoned back off Breaksword. Maiden's effect triggers, allowing me to get Blue Eyes out of my deck. I do not want to use the one that's in my grave. I want to get the one out of my deck because, like, Jesus Christ, don't want to keep drawing vanillas. So then he attacks over my Maiden that's used its effect with his Dante. Dante goes to defense mode, sets a card, passes his turn. At this point, I'm still very, very behind in cards because he's also about to resolve a Scarm Search for a Farfa. So, like, at this point, I've got way too much going against me, and, like, I know that he plays cards that are actual, like, relevant traps. Whereas, like, instead, if this was like a regular BA Kaiju deck, like just pure BA Kaiju deck, it would have been like trapless. But this is the Phantom Knight build, which runs traps. So I draw on a set, which is kind of lucky, essentially, but he ends up having the answer for it. But a set was actually just really strong here, specifically because of a set being able to use its ability to target Blue Eyes and make itself level 8. So I could have easily just made her level 8 or a rank 8 Xyz in the form of I could have gone into Galaxy Eyes, Tachyon Dragon, and then gone into like full armor, popped a card, and then gone into Dark Matter and potentially gotten some more cards out of my deck in that area. But I don't think at this point, I really don't think it was anything that was going to help me actually win the game. I think it would have just been prolonging the game. At this point, I think the game is very, very far out of my contention to win because in terms of cards, in terms of raw cards, I'm staring down like a -3 just immediately, just an immediate -3, but then he also has cards like, he still has 3 Fog Blades in the grave that he can use to make his plays extended even further. So like that's another 3 actual real cards that I have to deal with. Stuff like that. I'm just so far down in card advantage that I have no way to like actually win this deck in my opinion. And plus he already has 2 4s on the board that he hasn't overlaid with because he wanted to see what my options were. So he could easily just overlay those 2 into something like Dark Rebellion and Siege Dragon. Now I killed his Dante because Dante was the one that on his board just had the most potential value of like it could mill next turn and set up further plays, so I just killed it. I could have easily just killed one of the level 4s, but they aren't really that valuable, honestly, and like he could easily just cycle it back to where he has more 4s. But he ends up tributing my Blue Eyes for a Kaiju that he searches off Interrupted Kaiju Slumber that is in his grave, so he already has to deal with something that's smaller. He's already gotten his way into dealing with the 3000 ceiling that the BA deck struggles with. The Kaijus assist with that. And so he uses Fog Blade, bringing back one of his level 3s in the form of, I think, Gloves, it looks like, and then he normal summons a Terratop, overlays them into Leviair, uses Leviair to bring back his Cloak, and he can still make a rank 4 here with his Silent Boots and his Gloves, but he just overlays into a Beatrice by discarding the Farfa that he searched last turn on top of his Dante, and the Farfa banishes the Gamseal he just gave me, which lets him just hit me for a lot of damage. He's not really trying to go for game because he just knows that he has super control over the game at this point. Now, he could have overlaid the 2 4s. Yes, he could have done a lot of different things. But at this point, like, there's nothing I can really do in this game. And he has a Beatrice up, so I just have to hope that I can just get to, like, do what I want to do, but he's just not going to let me. I tribute the Gam Seal that comes back for my Tefnuit, and then when the Tefnuit hits the board, he does the smart play, attaches off Beatrice, and sends a Farfa from his deck to grave, and then uses Farfa to banish my Tefnuit. So now I can't actually summon Sue, I can't do any of that, and so I just surrender because I have no way to actually continue playing the game and not lose. But this last game is actually a game that I got with an older build of Blue Eyes. It's actually the pure build, but I decided to include it because I filmed it before I actually started testing with the Hieratic build. And this is an old game from Ranked that I filmed at the same time I was filming games for the Cosmo video, because I was trying to get videos for Burning Abyss matchups as well. So this one is actually the pure deck, but it's against a BA Kaiju deck. It's just pure BA Kaiju, but I just felt like including it. I could have made it its own video, but it just ended up not really being long enough. It just ended up being better for me to just make it its part of this video. Just to kind of also just have a point of comparison, because of the fact that, like, this is the pure build, and literally what I've been saying in this entire video is that the pure build, I feel like, has a stronger BA matchup because all your plays are much more streamlined and much more like impactful, and you do things like vomit out Spirit Dragons. So there is that. But anyway, my opening hand is really strong. I have 2 Were Arthdals, and I have the field spell, and I have Maiden. So I summon Maiden and use the field spell's additional normal summon to summon Maiden, and I activate both Were Arthdals, searching for 2 copies of Sage, and then I normal summon the Sage so I don't take the 4K, and I search a Veiler. And then I use the field spell's effect, triggering Maiden to send a Blue Eyes from deck to grave, and then special summoning a Blue Eyes, and then I end my board with Spirit Dragon, Maiden, Warning, and Veiler in my hand, and I'm just feeling really good about myself. I'm feeling really good about myself in general, because this setup is very strong. Like, I've gone +1 off of it. I've done all these different things. Maiden is strong by itself, so is Spirit Dragon. Well, at least it was strong until it got tributed by a Kaiju. Like, that pisses me off so much. Like, Kaijus are such a ball ache because you cannot play around them. You literally cannot play around Kaijus. It's literally like you either develop your board and lose to a Kaiju, or your opponent doesn't have the Kaiju, or you don't develop your board. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But anyway, so my opponent tributes my Spirit Dragon off for a Gam Seal, specials Cowcab out of his hand, normal summons Alec, I think that was, and he overlays into a Dante. Or he normal summoned Cowcab. Whatever. I don't know, I can't remember which one he specialed and which one he normal, but he did normal summon one of them. I think he normaled the Cowcab, specifically because he wanted to bounce my back row with the Dante Mill. And I end up warning the Dante because there's not real materials under that Dante. I'm perfectly fine with warning it. He adds the Cowcab back to his hand because that is not the one he special summoned, it's the one he normal summoned. Okay. And then he specials the Cowcab, and then he goes to special the Libic. So at this point, I'm like, alright, cool. He's literally making not real Dantes. He's making Dantes that literally have to get lucky. He has to mill a Seer, and even then, the cards he can get back off Seer aren't even that great. He has to mill Skarm or Graph or even like Rhino in order to have a good Dante here. So he detaches Cab, and he mills 3, milling Kaiju Slumber, another Libic, and a Graph. What a lucker, right? What a lucker. The last card is just, it was the last card so it could just ignorantly sit on top of his graveyard and stare at me and go, haha, look at you, look at me, I'm here now. But anyway, so I've got this Kaiju on my board, and the kind of thing that I actually like to do with my game plan against decks like this that play quite a few Kaiju cards, and the fact that he has an interrupted Kaiju Slumber in his grave already, is that I'll go out of my way to protect the Kaiju that's on the board so that he can't Kaiju me again, because if I have a Kaiju on my board, he can't attempt to special another Kaiju. So I can actually like leave that Kaiju up, that Gam Seal, I can leave it up and then develop to my board with like more Spirit Dragons and stuff, and then it keeps me from being Kaiju again. But anyway, he tries to enter his battle phase, and I Veiler his Dante so it goes back down to 1,000, so that he literally cannot attack over the Gam Seal. All he has is the Seer, and he has the Dante that's at 1,000. But he chains Mass Change second, discards Farfa out of his hand, and and makes a Dark Law. And so the Farfa banishes my my Maiden, and then the Dark Law attacks over the Gam Seal. I had to think for a second, I was losing my train of thought. But the Farfa returns my Maiden to my board, and so I use its effect. I activate the field spell, and I target Maiden. I use Maiden's ability, and I special the Blue Eyes out of my deck, and then one of them gets removed from play because, you know, Dark Law does that. Dark Law is a Macrocosmos. So at this point, I don't really want to lose any more of my cards to this stuff, and that Dante doesn't have any real materials under it. So I'm looking at what I could potentially make in terms of card plays. The Cat Sith isn't going to be useful to me in any way, shape, or form. So I just synchro away with the Cat Sith and the Blue Eyes into a Spirit Dragon, and then I attack the Spirit Dragon into the Dante because the Dante's still in attack mode. He could potentially mill with it next turn, but it's got a Livic under it, which cannot trigger because he has no cards in hand, so I'm guaranteed to be able to negate this Dante in grave because he can't structure his chain links around me negating it. So I get to end my board again with Maiden and Spirit Dragon, and then Spirit Dragon can get to trigger itself and go into Azure Eyes. But the first things first is that he tries to activate Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, and I just use Silver Dragon to why do I keep calling it Azure Eyes? We're not to that point yet. Jesus. Blue Eye Spirit Dragon to negate his Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, because while it did banish itself as cost, it did activate in grave, so it is a grave activation. So you get to negate it. And so he attacks into my Maiden. I negate the attack special Blue Eyes. I don't choose to tag into Azure Eyes because I don't want my Spirit Dragon, the last Spirit Dragon I play, to get banished because of the way the Dark Law operates. And so I just get my Blue Eyes off my Maiden, enter my next turn, and I just go into my battle phase, attack with Spirit Dragon, attack with Blue Eyes, and at this point I feel like keeping the Spirit Dragon on the board to see what his play during his next turn could be is just more beneficial. So I just end up using the Sages in my hand to, since I've already cleared the Dark Law, I don't have to worry about searching cards. So I normal summon the Sage, and I use it to search Valor because, if he has Tour Guide, something like that, definitely don't want to be dealing with that. And then I use the Sage and the Blue Eyes that are on my board to just raw make Azure Eyes because I have access into another Azure Eyes off Spirit Dragon, but I'd also love to keep Spirit Dragon on the field to negate whatever grave effects he might activate because, he's playing BA. And so he top decks Tour Guide. I have Max C and Valor in my hand. So I'm like, this is great on any area, any account. And so I Valor as Tour Guide, and during my next standby phase, I get to use Azure Eyes as effect, get Blue Eyes back again. I've summoned Blue Eyes in this game an obscene amount of times. No white Spirit Dragons to be found. But I end up just turning everything to attack mode because he's at 34, and I literally just get to blow him out of the game with all of the board presence that I currently possess. And that is just a game I wanted to show because literally it just feels like the deck is much more cohesive in its pure form, and all the plays are more impactful and meaningful, like even in the face of like Burning Abyss's infinite floating ability. Like you seem to have easier access into cards that are more meaningful in the matchup anyway. But anyway, that is all for this video. Let me know what you guys think about this deck and this matchup in the comments down below. Links are in the description of my Facebook and Twitch links if you want to check those out. Definitely, that's what they're there for. If you want to suggest a deck for me to play, send it to my Facebook fan page, which there is a link for in the description as well. If you want to support me, clicking ad on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is more than it takes to support me and keep me going and keep me motivated to making videos, and I would greatly appreciate it if that's something you could take the few seconds out of your day to do to help me out. But other than that, that is all for this video. Look for more DevPro Duel videos coming out in the future, and as always guys, take care.